Broadcasting live. It's America's longest running talk show on computers. It's Computer America, bringing you the biggest names in technology with guest interviews, new products, and your emails. Listen live at computeramerica.com on any device around the world. Email the show at live@computeramerica.com or find us on social media. Be sure to check out our website for contests, giveaways, show notes, live video stream, podcasts, and more. You're listening to Computer America.
Hello and welcome into the Computer America Show. We are the nation's longest running, nationally syndicated radio talk show on computers and technology. Welcome into the program, everyone. Hey, how you doing? Obviously, happy Friday. Hopefully everyone out there is doing well. Obviously, hey, got to bring up the weather. It's chilly again, so that's fun. Hopefully you weren't getting used to the unseasonably warm winter that we've been having. So there you go, everyone. Welcome into the show. Today, great show planned for you where the entire hour is dedicated to Ralph Bond. He is our science and tech trends correspondent. And yeah, everyone, it's going to be a really great show. He has a great list of topics to talk about, and we're going to get into that in just a moment. But before we do, a couple of things, including computeramerica.com. That's where you'll find everything from the show notes, a link to our guest website, the live video feed. There's also a chat room attached to the live video feed, which you can find at twitch.tv/computeramerica, and so much more at our website. We have a lot of things working behind the scenes here where we should have a lot more guests. Obviously, CES wrapped up about a month ago, and a lot of the companies that debuted out there, let's just say we're pretty much booked solid for 2 months. It's we got a lot of guests coming your way. So if you want to hear about directly from these companies and what they do, feel free to drop us a line live at computeramerica.com. We will do our best to get them on, and if not, hey, just sit back and relax and enjoy the show. So today, as I said before, Ralph Bond, and we're going to introduce him right now, bring him into the conversation, and see how he's doing. So everyone, once again, regular correspondent. He's been here before many a time, and yeah, Ralph, how you doing?
I'm doing great. And talking about weather here in Portland, Oregon area, we're very excited because overnight and into Saturday, we may get, wait for it, snow. And that's like a big deal up here.
yeah. And that's always one thing that it's like that kind of gatekeeping where I remember like Atlanta, Georgia, got like 2 or 3 inches of snow, and they didn't have any of the equipment to deal with it. And, right. Most places you're like 2 inches of snow, what babies? But you got to realize they don't have the infrastructure for it, and like it shut Atlanta down. And so any measurable amount of snow where you're not normally getting it, Ralph, stay tucked in your house. It might get a little messy.
Yeah. Oh, you got that right. You're absolutely correct, because here in the Portland metro area, snow is rare. I mean, it does happen, but it's a bit of accumulation. Of course, we all know what happens overnight. It's the freezing and refreezing and creating the ice and black ice that makes driving just treacherous, again, for a lot of drivers who we're not from Wisconsin or Minnesota or something like that. We don't know how to drive in that kind of conditions, and our cars aren't, generally speaking, equipped for it. So it's going to be an interesting weekend here in Portland.
For sure. So, but for everyone else, hey, one more time, if you haven't heard of Ralph, I think Ralph should introduce himself, and then we'll jump right into the show notes, which he can give us a summary of as well.
Well, sure. I've had a long career in high tech, going way back to, I was in a mini computer company in Orange County, California, and then I was with Rockwell Semiconductors, who were the fax chip maker kings of the world once upon a time, many years ago. And then I got involved with several high tech advertising and press relations agencies, and then I got involved with Intel Corporation for about almost 14 years. That's how I came up to the Oregon area where Intel is, of course, and then spent the last 10 years approximately of my active career with Autodesk, the AutoCAD people, computer-aided design folks, and then retired in November of 2017, and I've just been having a blast, including continuing my association with good old Computer America.
And we definitely appreciate that. So obviously, like we said, if you want a link to Ralph's website, we have that in the show notes, and we'll explain how to get there later. But in the meantime, the show notes themselves, they're here. You picked out a lot of great stories. And by the way, if you could just maybe go into what do you look for in a story, because you are obviously, you put these together over the course of a month, and you're a bit more discerning than you used to be, because I remember you used to come on the show, obviously, it was a 2-hour show, so you come on with like 20 stories, but you're a bit more discerning. Like now you have, I think usually about 10 is what you aim for.
Yeah, today it's 9. A weird number, but oh well.
So what do you look for in a story? Before we start, what catches your eye about a story?
Well, yeah, I think it's discerning, of course, but most of all, I'm looking at things, it's broader than obviously just computer or directly related to personal computers or something associated with that. And that's wonderful, and that'll show up. And actually, let's be real, almost everything we're talking about in technology today somehow involves computers and networking and all that good stuff. So they're all interrelated anyway. But I like to look at science and technology stories that indicate a trend or an innovation. So it's a pretty broad brush. And so I look for headlines. I go through the news services and I see a headline that catches my attention or inspires me. And that's what I want to share with the audience today.
Perfect. So why don't we go ahead, not delay anymore, and let's just go ahead and jump right into story number 1. And yeah, I got to say, he's cute.
Yeah, this is a fun story. This is from CNN, a story by Rachel Metz. Headline, and this is indicative of what I look for, what catches my attention. Get a load of this headline. Robot valets may soon park cars at this London airport. And if you have the show notes, which is so important, you can see this amazing little device. It's I think, very, very clever. So let's get into the story. It says, travelers flying out of London's Gatwick Airport may soon have a robot parking their car. Later this year, the airport will test an autonomous robot that slides a large, slender bed beneath vehicles and totes them to spots in the lot. And you might think, well, this is kind of overkill. I can just drive onto a parking lot and park my car. What's the point? Well, hang on. Check this out. The airport plans to experiment with this robot parking system in one of its long-term lots for 3 months, according to an application the airport filed at the Crawley Borough Council in December. The hope is that the autonomous system will enable the airport, here's the payoff, to pack many more cars in the same amount of lot space. That's the key, folks. Gatwick Airport is the second largest airport in the United Kingdom after London's Heathrow Airport. This amazed me. About 46.1 million travelers passed through Gatwick in 2018. Now, here's, going forward with this, keep in mind the whole motive here is, let's take, for example, a parking lot that has 1,000 spaces. Can we double that or substantially increase it? That's the motivation we're talking about.
I think we've all been there when we pull into a parking space and both cars on either side kind of get too close and you can't even open your door. But that's kind of the goal with, I guess, a project like this, is that you get them so close together that you just get more cars.
Well, yeah, exactly right. So the application says they will use robots from a Paris-based company called Stanley Robotics. And according to its website, Stanley Robotics previously tested its parking robot named Stan in France at the Charles de Gaulle Airport and Lyon Airport. And neither Gatwick Airport nor Stanley Robotics returned requests for comment, which I think is a shame because it would have been a golden opportunity for this reporter to get more information. But going on, and here's really a demonstrative, shows what the goal is here. Gatwick Airport plans to cut 170 of the 2,350 self-parking spots that are currently in a lot to create 270 robot valet spots for the trial, effectively adding 100 spots. So you take 170 traditional spots, use this self-parking robotics approach, and you can get 270 parking spots. To your point, Ben, about maybe more snugly putting them together, but with precise sensors, right? And the passengers will, I love this part, passengers will drive their cars into one of 8 numbered cabins. So you can see that in the picture there, like little mini garages. Confirm their parking reservation on a touchscreen and take their keys with them as they leave. This is good because you're not leaving your keys behind. The robot will take the car to a spot in a secured lot. So again, the little robotic device, and you can see that in the video, thanks, Ben, will slide this tray underneath, lift up the car, transport it expertly to its space, right? And the service will have access to users' flight details. This is great. This way, a robot can also bring the car back to a cabin, so it will be waiting for the person when they return. Potentially, there's so much here that I just think is very exciting. I think this is a really smart use of robotics in terms of autonomous robotics, because then think about this. You and I have talked for years about autonomous cars, for example, and all the uncertainties of the reality of, say, busy downtown traffic and so forth, the things that you could never anticipate, variables. But if you take a parking lot in an airport, you can plot out, you can know down to the centimeter or sub-centimeter, all the spaces, everything. So the autonomous vehicle would be able to very accurately stow and retrieve a vehicle and store them very closely. So I think this has some really interesting potential, and I just love this story.
Yeah, and there's a pretty cool video on YouTube that we've been kind of showing off, and like for a while there, I was just kind of staring at the wall. I was like, "What is it?" It's one of those 360 YouTube videos, so you had to kind of drag your cursor around to look at it. And it's this project in action. So it's not just it's not even like it's not even just like a CGI thing. Like it's they actually have a working prototype, and I mean I like it. This is obviously like a middle ground between fully autonomous and these things being autonomous and dumb cars. I like it. I really do. This is a really cool idea.
Me too. I'm with you. With the world of autonomous, we've talked about this before. This relates thematically to what you were just saying. I'm a huge believer of help me, the human, with robotics. And it's not. I'm not saying I'm totally against autonomous. That's fine. But I like this because this is sort of a hybrid approach. It's applying autonomous a vehicle, as it were, or a device in this case, into an environment where that's very conducive, a controlled environment of a parking garage or a parking lot. And I just think this is think about high-rise apartment buildings or in the future where maybe many cars could be parked with these kinds of technology solutions to allow a smaller footprint to have more cars, which would be very, very important for high-rise parking underground, for example.
Right. Yeah. And it's you're right. This is taking kind of people out of the whole equation, but at the same time, you get the benefit because you just drop your car off, pick it up when you want it, and hey, you're done. It's very, very cool. And again, it doesn't require you to have like a new $80,000 self-driving car. No, it just works with anything. So that's going to be hugely important going into the future. So there's that one. Definitely like that one. Let's see what story number 2 has. And this is also something we've talked a lot about before in the world of exoskeletons.
Yes, absolutely. And I'm a huge believer. I'm not against the idea of having humanoid robots and the wonderful holy grail of fully, self-contained and what would be the word, controlled and motivated and someday scary, self-aware. Skynet, okay. But that's all good. But I think the reality for me and my belief is the near-term powerful future for robotics when it comes to human-related robotics is augmenting the human. And this is a great example. So the headline here, this is from Slash Gear, a story by Chris Davies, and this is a headline that just jumped out at me. Honda's exoskeleton. Wow. I think I have the Electoral College on my mind for some reason. Anyway, Honda's exoskeleton is one assisted step closer to launch. Great little video in there, too, by the way, that shows this. And I just thought this was really interesting. Usually when you think of an exoskeleton, you think of a person fully encased with the arms and robotic arms and all this sort of thing. This is a really trimmed down version.
Yeah, you kind of think like Alien, with the giant mover, the biggest system. But no, this is definitely something much smaller.
And it's focused on a particular medical need. So here we go. Here's the story. Honda's walking assist device, a partial exoskeleton, that's really cool, to help those with difficulties moving unsupported, has been given the green light for release by U.S. regulators. The wearable robotic gadget was given pre-market notification by the U.S. FDA after clinical trials helped demonstrate it can significantly help in rehabilitation. Now, it's not been a quick route to this point. Mind you, Honda began researching the walking assist device all the way back in 1999. So this is not a, flash in the pan kind of deal. This has been brewing for a long time. Exploring bipedal, is that how you pronounce it? Bipedal,
Yep.
right?
Bipedal.
Robotic movements and their potential for human support. The research helped develop Asimo, which I know you know all about, and Craig does too, right? Honda's humanoid robot, but continued in parallel with the exoskeleton too. Now, here's the thing that's really, really interesting. Rather than restore walking abilities to people who have completely lost the use of their legs, the walking assist device instead aims to help those with gait deficits, GAIT, the smoothness of walking and the balance, right? Most commonly associated with the aftermath of a stroke. Such conditions can make movement more tiring and slower. So you see how this is a very focused device. Honda's wearable straps onto the waist and around the legs. Sensors in the right and left sides track the position of the user's hip joints, while motors in the leg sections help promote symmetrical walking patterns, ding, 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 as well as generally guiding movement at the same time. Progress of metrics like left-right symmetry, movable hip angle range, walking speed, and other gait parameters are logged and can be analyzed so it can, get smarter, right? In the process, studies have shown it also promotes neuromuscular recovery. Honda put the walking assist device into a 2014 clinical trial in Chicago, where its efficacy in helping with post-stroke gait rehabilitation was made clear. You got to love this. I mean, this is a good example of the kind of story that just gets me all flamed up.
No, it's obviously it won't walk for you, but I guess to most people, this is something that they would probably never, or hopefully they would never need. But for those who need it, I mean, I have never heard of anything like this, so it's pretty
isn't
innovative.
It cool? I mean, I love the bit about being a partial exoskeleton. Well, it just makes your whole mind flame up with all kinds of ideas about possible uses.
Yeah, and obviously in my personal life, we've had to deal with stroke recently, and it's not the easiest thing. But I remember, kind of the whole relearning how to walk thing, and it's like tradition, like the way that they have it now is that they have these straps that they put on your legs, and they kind of put a hand on your back, and they have two people walk beside you, and they kind of help you manipulate your legs for you. So this would free up, I guess, people to this would make rehabilitation easier, I think, with less people, but at the same time more effective.
And not to be a crutch. And I mean that in the kindest way, but as something that, as it says in the article, to help develop neuromuscular recovery. So it's not going to be a crutch in the negative sense at all, right? I'm going to skip over the quote here and get to this part. What we haven't seen though is a commercial launch. Well, Honda has begun leasing the device in Japan through rehabilitation clinics where it's said to be in use by around 250 facilities. So this thing's out there in Japan. It has not yet done so outside of Japan. This FDA approval, though, would pave the way for just that. Now, it says if it all sounds too good to be true, here comes Honda itself to pour some cold water on the news. So it says, Honda has yet to announce any business plans for the walking assist device, as it is at pains to point out, which means that despite the FDA pre-market notification, there's still no word on when, if ever, you might actually be able to strap on the exoskeleton yourself. But I think it's inevitable. My gosh, if they're deploying it already in Japan in 250 facilities, they've done tests in Chicago in our own country. The results seem promising. It just seems to me inevitable that it will be commercialized and brought to market. I think the author here was just trying to be a little bit of truth in lending and setting expectations for near term.
It's always interesting to see what these companies kind of do in their spare time. Like you don't think about companies as spare time, but with spare research and development. Like you said way at the beginning of this article, they developed this in tandem with their Asimo robot, who can dance and do a bunch of other things. So I guess they had the data, they had, how to do this, and now someone decided, hey, let's just go ahead and do this in this device. So I think you're right. It has a place. It has a purpose. It's just I don't know if it's Honda just kind of, getting people excited about technology, or they might actually bring it to market. Who knows? But very, very cool. Definitely like that.
Yeah, I think it's great. It's great. Another great medical technology potential and other possible uses as well.
Yeah, and I guess if I'm just blue skying here, and we're going to move on to story number 3, but if I'm just blue skying, I mean, if you can properly, kind of teach or help rehabilitate people to walk correctly, who's to say you can't use this to, let's say if you're a weightlifter, to have proper form in your legs when you lift, or if you're a runner, have proper form in your run.
Interesting.
Just use it for any way that you have a proper form. You could use this to help emphasize that. So
yeah.
Always possible.
You would think physical therapists would be all over this thing.
Oh, for sure. So this next one, story number 3, always like NVIDIA. They're definitely a great company with sometimes almost too much money to throw around. But what's story number 3, and what's NVIDIA up to?
Okay, this was a fun one. This is from Engadget. It's a story by Mariella Moon, and the headline, I just love this kind of stuff. I'm crazy about drones and robotics, and there's certain things that are real hot buttons for me. So the headline here was, NVIDIA's new lab aims to develop robotic breakthroughs. Those who hate cleaning up after cooking will love one of its current projects, a kitchen robot. So with that headline and subhead, irresistible, right? And there's a great picture. And I like the fact that it's potentially going to unload a can of Spam from the drawer. That'll appeal to our Hawaiian.
And by the way, anyone out there who's watching the video portion, we're going to play the video of the robot in action. So heads up.
Yeah, that's cool. So here we go. It says, NVIDIA has opened a new lab in Seattle, and it's meant to serve as home for all of its robotics projects. Wow, that's pretty interesting. Over 50 research scientists and students from the University of Washington will work in the facility under NVIDIA's Senior Director of Robotics Research, Dieter Fox. He explained that the lab will bring together a collaborative, interdisciplinary team of experts in robot control and perception, computer vision, human-robot interaction, and deep learning. Sounds pretty interesting, and I love the fact that they're kind of consolidating all the research in this new lab. So it says, NVIDIA is hoping that the lab can give rise to the next generation of robots that can work with humans in open-ended environments not designed specifically for them. Now, that's a key point. To work in environments not specifically designed for them. So this robotic experiment that we're talking about in this story is for one that can be flexible, could be used in a variety of possible things, not just a one-trick pony, as it were, right?
Well, when you think about robots, and just saying that when you think about robots, and for those who can't see it, it's kind of a robotic arm. When you think about robotic arms, you think production line, and it does one repetitive task over and over again. No, this is a robot arm on wheels. So.
Well, yeah, and again, you made the point. That's a great analogy of manufacturing, say like at a car plant, and a robot arm that does nothing but take the car door and put it in alignment to be put into the car body. And that's it. It just does that one thing over and over and over. This is more flexible, which means it has to be much smarter, much more interesting in terms of its control, software, and so on. So it goes on to say, in fact, one of its main projects right now is a kitchen helper machine, which is powered by NVIDIA's, I love this, Jetson platform. Now, I'm old enough to know what that refers to, the good old Jetsons cartoon show, the 50s, late 50s, early 60s, or whatever time period it was. George Jetson and the futuristic thing, and they had the robot, Rosie the robot, right, I think?
Yeah. That was it.
So it says, I'll read that sentence again because I chopped it up with all that side commentary. So in fact, one of its main projects right now is a kitchen helper machine, which is powered by NVIDIA's Jetson platform and Titan GPUs, graphical processing units, and can function in an actual kitchen. The kitchen manipulator, that's the name of this robot, relies on deep learning to detect and track specific objects based on its own simulation. It doesn't need a map of the place beforehand. Let that sink in. It doesn't need a map of the place beforehand and can quickly adapt to changes in its surroundings. Wow. It can even open and close doors and drawers to get objects and tools. Due to the ever-changing nature of a kitchen, Fox, who's the head of this new lab, sees it as an ideal location for testing. A robot that can deal with dozens of littered pans, spatulas, and ingredients will likely be able to navigate other complex environments after all. So a little tongue-in-cheek ending there, but very interesting. I love the bit about it's not a one-trick pony. It's adaptive and can deal with changing scenarios and not having to deal with a preconceived, mapped-out environment.
Yeah, obviously it's probably not the best form factor. I mean, it's pretty big, pretty bulky. But really, I mean, if you really think about it, this, like, even what it's doing also helps a lot of its other divisions, like, because this is the same technology that they put into self-driving cars, because they have to map the environment, they have to react to it, they have to, do all these kinds of things. Like, this data, even though it may seem unrelated, no, it's helping a lot of their other initiatives. So,
well, yeah, and another thing, unfortunately, that takes it into a somewhat negative thing in terms of jobs for people. You've been hearing a lot of, if you've noticed, a lot of stories of late about predictions for where robotics are going to wipe out whole layers of retail jobs and fast food jobs and so forth. And on the unfortunate side, I suppose, this kind of technology could easily be deployed in fast food places to be making the burgers and doing things like that and cutting out human beings from the equation, which would be, sad for people that rely on those jobs. But, there's all kinds of possibilities. So it's good and bad.
Well, see, and you'd hope that, the benefits to society as a whole, kind of reach everyone, that when you don't need people to sit there for 8 hours a day and make burgers for people, no, the burgers make themselves. Hey, maybe everyone gets a burger instead of, but hey, that's talking about different forms of society and government and whatnot. So we're not going to get into that. But you're right, robotics are coming, and this story by itself kind of proves that they are improving. So it's not just Honda, it's not just, any other company. No, all companies, including even graphics card companies, are working on this.
Yeah.
So,
Good
way to highlight that. Story number 4, we have a couple minutes before the break, and you're going to hear the music, and then we're going to come right back to it. But we're going to go ahead and introduce and start this story. Story number 4, Bluetooth. And what is this?
Oh, this is great. So we'll tease it, and then we'll do the break and come back and do it justice. But it comes from The Verge, story by John Porter. Get a load of this headline. Talk about irresistible. This tiny Bluetooth chip doesn't need a battery because it harvests energy from the air. Subtitle: Amazon and Samsung are both investors, and a full release is planned for 2020. What? This is amazing. We're going to learn all about this video and so forth. But again, the nut here is, we'll just jump in and then we'll listen for the music and we'll come back after the break. So here we go. The Internet
and of course, I was going to give you the option to either jump into the story, or if you want to talk about Jeff Bezos and, having his being blackmailed. But okay.
Oh my gosh, that's what a story. Let's talk about that for a second. Then we'll jump back into the story after the break.
Just a minute.
I thought, from a press relations point of view, which is where I spent my career, right? Although I was in high-tech press relations, talking to engineering magazines and so forth, not the general public. But the thought that, okay, instead of cowering to this threat, and some people contend it's extortion, he's just taking it right on, just saying, okay, go ahead. And it's calling their bluff. It's the most classic example of a press relations calling a bluff that I've ever seen. And I'm sure maybe the material is very embarrassing to him and so forth, but all the press coverage I've seen in the last, 12 hours or so has been positioning him as brave and courageous and all this sort of stuff, despite the fact that he's going through a nasty divorce and all these sorts of things. So, friends, from a public relations tactical point of view, this one will go down in the history books. Young men and women going forward will study this case as an example of very interesting how to deal with what otherwise would be terribly negative news.
Yeah, and so obviously the music in the background, and we're not going to come back and talk about Jeff Bezos, but I think you're right that it's it had the story's still in the headlines, but at the same time it's not like Amazon stock has not tanked because of the story, even though it has gotten so much attention. But I digress. Anyways, there's that one. Everyone, when we come back, we're going to talk about a different kind of unit here. This is the first battery-free Bluetooth sensor tag. Everyone, stay tuned. More Computer America, more Ralph Bond, and everything right after this. By the way, if you want to join us, twitch.tv/Computer America or at our website, computeramerica.com. Everyone, stay tuned. Be right back.
Greece is cheap.
But the airfare costs a fortune.
Paris?
Not much closer, and again, airfare...
What about Puerto Vallarta?
Let's face it, flying anywhere is just too expensive.
Wait, what's this? Low-cost airlines.
With one call to low-cost airlines, you'll drastically slash your travel costs. We're talking insanely low airline prices to any of your favorite destinations. Where would you like to go? London, Rome, Costa Rica, Australia?
Wow, that's cheap.
So why wait? Call now to learn how crazy cheap it is to fly anywhere in the U.S. or international. Our prices are so low, we can't publish them. The only way to get them is to call to instantly hear the most amazing best deals on airline travel. It's that easy. So call now and start packing.
800-215-4461. 800-215-4461. 800-215-4461. That's 800-215-4461.
We are all Brother Wolf. 10 years ago, a group of locals banded together to create positive change. We took animals into our homes, held adoption events at local retailers, and talked to the community about our mission to help build a no-kill Asheville. A decade later, we have achieved so many victories for animals in need. There's been so much progress, yet there's still so much to do. As part of our year-long celebration, we encourage you to become a member of our special Compassionate Circle program. With a monthly donation of $10 or more, you will have behind-the-scenes access to the work we are doing at Brother Wolf. Our goal is to reach 1,000 members because we receive no government funding. Working together, we can help build and sustain no-kill communities. Learn more at compassionatecircle.bwar.org. We are a 501c3 tax-deductible organization.
All right, everyone, and welcome back to the Computer America Show. It is 32 minutes past the hour as we continue on here, and of course, we are, the whole hour dedicated to Ralph Bond, all of these very interesting stories. And again, if you missed any part of our conversation today, check out the podcast wherever podcasts are heard, and of course, search Computer America. We should pop right up, and you'll be good to go. So, obviously, Ralph, thank you for continuing on, and and like I said before the break, we're going to get into this, and although we'll see if this kind of technology comes from something else, because I think I remember something similar to this technology that we actually talked about with you in previous years, but like whenever, and this may just be the form factor, because and I want to see if you remember, do you recall a story about charging pacemakers like through the skin instead of...
Yeah, that's right. And I'm trying to remember what was the technology that would actually provide the charge.
It wasn't Bluetooth,
now,
obviously.
Sounds familiar. I think I remember that story.
Yeah, it obviously was not Bluetooth. That's not enough energy. But
that's right.
but wireless charging is a very, I guess, varied field. So let's go ahead and get into this one.
Yeah. So let's reintroduce this again. We're coming on the backside of the break here. It's a story from The Verge, a story by John Porter. Again, the headline is, "This tiny Bluetooth chip doesn't need a battery because it," get this, "harvests energy from the air." And it talks about Amazon and Samsung are both investors, and a full release is planned for 2020. So this has real cred, so to speak, real street cred, right? And we've got a video here you can see and so forth. So here we go. Let's jump into this. Mm-hmm. The Internet of Things promises to connect billions of otherwise ordinary devices to the Internet. But when each one needs to have its own battery, there's a limit to how small or cheap they can become, of course, right?
Right.
Now, this is fun. I love this. A new paper-thin Bluetooth chip that's able to operate entirely without a battery could be about to solve this problem. The postage stamp-sized chip from Wiliot, that's Wiliot, is able to harvest energy from the ambient radio frequencies around us, such as Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, that's kind of ironic, and cellular signals, and use them to power a Bluetooth-equipped ARM processor that can be connected to a variety of sensors. Wow. I just love that. I have to say it again, the irony of this Bluetooth sensor chip getting its energy possibly from Bluetooth ambient radio frequencies, right?
And obviously you're not breaking the laws of physics, because whatever it's whatever senses it. So like, let's say your phone has Bluetooth enabled, would be then charging it. So
yeah,
it's cool.
It's very cool. So Willie Ott says the size of the Bluetooth chip, combined with the lack of any battery, means it can be produced cheaply and mounted on almost anything. The company gives several potential use cases for the technology. For example, it could be embedded in consumer products, to provide easy access to a digital manual when the original paper version is long lost. That's interesting. Or it could be put on a clothing label and used to communicate the optimal settings to a washing machine. Now sign me up for that. I mean, this is an enduring. I don't do the wash in my house because I cannot understand the cryptic formulas that my wife has embedded in her mind. You know, these colors, this is cold wash only. It wouldn't it be great if the chip and the label of my shirt or something would tell the washing machine, I got to do it this way.
It's like, I have I don't know, let's say a nice button down, and you pull out your phone, you scan your shirt, and you go, cold, gentle rinse only. It's like, oh, thank you, shirt. Yeah, I got you.
I would love to have a smart washing machine with this technology. I would just hold my
clothes
up real quick to a scanner, and it would say, put it over in this pile, put it this, and now pile 1, set the machine for this, pile 2, when you're done,
that's
do it this
even
way. Wouldn't
better.
that be great? It would be a salvation to guys. I think men brains just don't understand laundry at all. I don't get it at all. Okay.
I definitely like that.
There was my soapbox. Going on with the story, it says, however, the fact that it can also be combined with sensors raises more interesting possibilities. Amen. In addition to tracking items through a supply chain, a temperature sensor could also report when items get either too hot or too cold. Okay, that's pretty cool. Elsewhere, a pressure sensor could detect when a food container is empty and automatically order a replacement, thereby making so-called smart fridges truly smart. Although a recent $30 million financing round means that Willie Ott now counts on both Amazon and Samsung as investors, it will still be another year before its sensor tags are widely available. Willie Ott says that it hopes to offer them as part of a limited release in 2019 before making them widely available in 2020. So this could be very important, very significant for so many possible. You know this, Ben. You take a technology like this, you turn it out there in the world, like years ago, smartphones come on the scene, and all of a sudden all these developers figure out incredible ways to use the technology that nobody ever thought of in the beginning. I think that's the same kind of thing that will happen with these battery-less, non-battery powered Bluetooth sensors and so forth. Wow, cool stuff.
So I had to go to their website to see if they list it, which I don't think they do, unfortunately, because obviously, they say that they're cheap and effective and so on and so forth. They don't list a price, and I'm going to kind of pose it to you. What would a good price point? Because the point of this is like it's supposed to be cheap and effective, but what is cheap on maybe an Amazon scale, which sends
you're right.
thousands.
You're right, Ben. You're absolutely right, 100%. Let's take clothing. Clothing is an incredible margin tight. Men's clothing, women's clothing, they charge exorbitant additional charges. But you'd have to get this down to certainly sub $1 per chip, or even less, right? You'd have to get it way, way down there for this to be for the clothing industry, for example. Maybe other things like transport vehicles, where bins and that sort of thing about sensing whether a bin is empty or full, or a restaurant, commercial applications where your tolerance for investment is higher than consumer stuff. But it would have to be mass produced, which I'm sure they can do. And because there's no battery involved, that dramatically lowers cost, right? So, it could be pennies perhaps someday. I don't know.
Yep. So I am going to bookmark their website. Want to see if they want to come on the show, because that seems...
Wouldn't that be fun?
Yeah, because that seems... and there's a lot of questions, obviously. And then, but I got to say that when I heard about this, my first thought is because I've seen a lot of cool business cards out there, and interesting business cards are very, very cool to me. What if you could embed this in a business card and you could just say, just scan this with your phone, Bluetooth, and every one of your business cards turns into an automatic, kind of add to contacts, kind of system.
Brilliant. See, there you go. That's a good example of this. Turn this technology loose and see where the creativity takes it. It's fun to think about.
I would definitely be interested if, because they said they were doing a limited round of them in 2019. I want to see if I can get my hands on, like, let's say a 50 or 100 pack, assuming that they're cost effective. So looking forward to that, and very, very cool. Now, that's story number 4. Anyone who is following along, I think we're just going to go ahead and skip on over to story number 5. So not skipping any, just story number 5.
All right.
And let's actually, kind of be, I don't want to say, we covered this on the show, I'd say about 2 weeks ago. It's definitely worth reiterating because just the form factor and what they're able to do, super cool. But I didn't want to, kind of go over it all again. So let's do the highlights, Ralph, and then we'll go to another story.
Sure, absolutely. So we'll do the Reader's Digest condensed version of this.
Perfect.
This is also from the magazine The Verge, story by Sam Byford. And the headline was, Samsung is making a 1 terabyte storage chips for phones, bound for the Galaxy S10, ? Is the subhead. And so in a nutshell, what they're talking about is the world's first 1 terabyte embedded universal flash storage chip for phones. And oh my gosh, this would be a dream come true for my wife. She's got not a terribly older iPhone, but a couple generations back, and she's just so frustrated to have her data filled up and needs more storage. But can you imagine 1 terabyte?
And actually, I gotta say the iPhone is notorious for this because now that you know that this exists, memory for phone 1 terabyte, it's possible. Even like 3 generations ago, I think, for like iPhones, they recently raised it to 16 gigs. It used to be 8 gigabytes for years, and I bet your wife has that. I understand her frustration. I had that too. It's awful.
Yeah, actually, she has a model. I don't exactly know which one it is, but it's 16 gigs. I've got 32, and a huge difference, and it's very frustrating.
16 gigs to 1 terabyte. That's so much more space.
Yeah. And what's interesting, when I talked to my wife about this story, I showed her the story, and she said, what in the heck would somebody need a terabyte of data? Of course, that's the classic initial response. We always think, I remember when I got my first, this is how old I am, when I got my first, get ready, 1 gig hard drive for a PC I was building, like 20 years ago, or I don't know how long ago it was. And I thought, I'll never be able to fill up this 1 gig. How could I possibly fill it up?
Well, when you think about,
you'd always do.
Yeah, but back then, when you think about the hyper compression for, or even I guess the low resolution of like photos or Word documents, when things are like let's say 30 kilobytes for a Word document, or let's say 100 kilobytes for a picture, it would take you forever. But now, hey, you take one extended 120 frames per second 4K video, and you could probably fill up a gig like almost instantly.
Oh, without question. And not to labor too much longer on this story, because I know we want to move on. But I also said to my wife, I said, think about our son-in-law and who's in the construction industry. And men and women in the construction industry today are using their tablets and their smartphones for very data-intensive activities, to your point, video and images and all kinds of things they're doing on job sites, where you take 5G technology coming and combine it with much greater capacity in our handheld tablets and smartphones. And believe me, it's going to go to work and be used. And won't before too long, someone will say, a terabyte, that's not enough.
Well, yeah, no, there's already a lot going. Like, I think wasn't too long ago we were talking about Samsung again, where they were sporting off. I want to say it was like 128 gigabyte SSD, or I'm sorry, 128 terabyte
right.
SSD.
Yes.
So, I mean, the experimental stuff, definitely great. Now, I was going to skip over story number 6, but because you mentioned 5G, and I do want to give a little shout out to a future show, I don't think they've been confirmed yet, but they've said they're going to come on. But in the next week or two, it's actually like an hour away from the studio. I actually used to live in Greenville, South Carolina. Sprint is going to be implementing one of the nation's first 5G networks in downtown Greenville, South Carolina. So we're going to have the executives in charge of that project come on the show and explain to us directly from Sprint what the importance of 5G is. But that whole thing leads into story number 6. So let's go ahead and talk about that one.
Yeah. And this is a short story, so we'll be able to plow through this pretty quick. Comes from Sky News. Story by Andy Hayes, and the headline is Surgeon in China used 5G network to operate remotely on an animal. So here's the story. A doctor in China has become the first to perform remote control surgery over a super fast 5G network. Now, that's the claim of the story. The surgeon who manipulated 2 robotic arms was 30 miles from the operating theater in Fujian province. I'm not sure I'm pronouncing that correctly. During the procedure, he removed the laboratory animal's liver, the South China Morning Post reported. The 5G system, which is said to be at least 10 times as fast as current networks, wow, and perhaps even up to 100 times, has a lag time of only 0.1 seconds.
Now, real quick. When it says faster, that's such a weird term to use. And I get, like, not every article is aimed at, people who are, I guess, very proficient in technology. Sometimes you just want to get the idea out. What do you think, Ralph? Do they mean by fast? Do they mean latency? Do they mean throughput? I mean, what do they mean by fast?
For me, my first gut reaction is transmission speed, right, from A to B, right?
So like the milliseconds.
Yeah.
I got you. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
And so, again, the significance of this little experiment was the fact that it was so much faster, however you want to define and think of faster in the 5G environment. It meant, the article goes on to say, that meant the delay between the surgeon's movements and the robot in the operating theater was short enough to avoid potentially dangerous mistakes. So remote surgery, obviously, any latency, it could potentially be a real problem, right?
Yeah.
And then it says, in the future, it's hoped that such technology will enable surgeons to work remotely in war zones and disaster areas. Imagine that. It will also allow specialists from large hospitals to assist more junior colleagues elsewhere or anywhere in the world. So this fun story, and again, linked to 5G, as you pointed out.
Yeah. And I keep saying, we talked about this before, we have discussed the idea before of, let's say we have a call bank where, you call up tech support and they'll work with you. There's a big building full of people who work tech support. What if medicine becomes that way? What if this technology, you have doctors all in one building in one country and they are doing operations all around the world?
Yeah, that's real, and it's mind-boggling. But if you can get the latency almost non-negligible, so it's almost real time, right?
Yeah,
the possibilities are pretty impressive.
Point one is pretty good. Just from my video game experience, that's about 100 milliseconds, and 100 milliseconds is noticeable. There's a noticeable lag time there, but it's not unmanageable. So I hope that they put the liver back. I don't know why they took it out of the animal, but
I know that's the one thing I was thinking about. It's a poor little animal. Well, here, you're going to die today because I'm going to take your liver out. Sorry.
And it's going to be a confirmed kill by a robot. But I digress. That's story number 6. We are looking at and story number 7 I guess is also pretty close because that's robots with Jenga. But actually we have time. We can do story number 7. So talk about from animals to party games.
Yes. Well, and this has some pretty profound implications. So it is using a game, Jenga, but has some pretty meaty implications. So this is from Engadget. a story by Saqib Shah. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. The title of the story is Mastering Jenga Taught This Robot Real-World Physics. All right, that's right there in the nutshell. Great picture, fun video, and so forth. Here we go in the story. Artificial intelligence is already better than humans at video games, quiz shows, and an ancient Chinese board game. Next up, the bots are coming for Jenga. In a newly published paper, scientists from MIT describe how they taught a robot real-world physics and a practical sense of touch by unleashing it on the tricky tower-building game. Let's stress this again. Taught a robot real-world physics and a practical sense of touch by unleashing it on a tricky tower-building game. That's the meat and potatoes here of this story.
Yep.
Why Jenga? Because unlike purely cognitive games that rely on visual cues, such as chess or Go, Jenga, quote, requires mastery of physical skills such as probing, pushing, pulling, placing, and aligning pieces, claims MIT's Professor Alberto Rodriguez. Can you imagine what an interesting job he must have? The robot, equipped with force sensors and cameras, immediately began prodding and poking the Jenga blocks using its two-pronged arm. Its task that looks easy on the surface, but as the game gets progressively harder, can cause a sweat-inducing panic in players. I mean, I know exactly what they're talking about. I'm sure you've played Jenga too.
Yep.
And then it goes on to say, around 300 pushes down the line, the bot developed a physics model of the world. Quote, the robot builds clusters and then learns models from each of these clusters instead of learning a model that captures absolutely everything that could happen. That one I had to read a bunch of times to kind of get that to sink in. It's pretty interesting. Said the paper's lead author, Nima Fazeli. Wow, pretty interesting. Here's some more. This practical approach differs from the norm, whereby scientists train a neural network by feeding it troves of data. And as we've seen recently, researchers are even ditching real-world interactions and turning to virtual simulations to train larger droids. And here's the conclusion. For now, the robot is only playing by itself. Its creators claim its newfound dexterity marks a significant step forward for robotic manipulation of real-world objects. The breakthrough could result in industrial machines that are less clumsy. In the future, the same arm could move beyond miniature blocks to building cars and furniture in factories and warehouses. So I just thought that the learning part of it, the different mental approach to training, as it were, machine learning approach that's embodied in this experiment at MIT, I thought was just really, really intriguing.
So the video that we're showing on the video portion right now, it's tangentially related. For anyone out there just listening to the radio, it's I guess stick figures, kind of 3D stick figures running through a maze and obstacles and things like that. And it's similar because although this is from Google's DeepMind and not MIT, but it's a trend that they're doing where they are giving the programs parameters, saying that, hey, you have 2 legs, or in this case, learning to walk, or I guess in this case, you have a Jenga board, you have to stack them. They're giving them rules and boundaries and what you can do, and then the machines are learning what works, and they try over and over and over again until they learn this works, and then they improve on that. Right.
It's a very kindred spirit kind of experiment going on. They're showing the listeners right now and the viewers. It's really cool.
Yeah,
it's very, very interesting.
I read a really cool article. It was like that. This is why I think a lot of experts in the field of machine learning and AI, they don't even know what's really going on because they don't program them. They program themselves, and the researchers just kind of sit back and say, well, here's what it's doing. And they're like, why is it doing that? And they go, we don't know. It taught itself that. So that's
I keep thinking of Skynet. It's scary.
It's suspiciously close. So there's that. It taught itself how to play Jenga, and you're right. There's a lot more to Jenga than I think we think about. it's very impressive that it was able to do that. So with that being said, we have time for just one more story. How about, and I think the air taxi. I think we're going to end with the air taxi. Something else people can look forward to. Story number 9.
Yeah, and the air taxi has a consumer electronics show tag into it too. So I know you talked about that being content you're going to be doing for still many more shows to come. So this comes from MSN. It was a posting on the 9th of January. So this comes, I think, from a press release from Bell, and it says Bell unveils the air taxi. And there's a cool image here, and there's a video you can see too that's really kind of cool. So Bell kicked off the official opening day of CES 2019, Tuesday, January the 8th, by showing off the full-scale design of the Bell Nexus, an air taxi of the not-so-distant future. That's kind of cool. Believe it or not, flying cars are right around the corner, not in the form of personal family vehicles, but rather as ride-sharing option. I think that is much more likely to happen. Uber has been putting some serious work into developing vertical takeoff and landing air taxis, and on Tuesday at CES, one of the first aircraft manufacturers that the company teamed up with to develop these virtual takeoff and landing vehicles debuted a complete model of a functional air taxi.
There it is.
The video, there it is. Yeah, it's pretty cool looking too.
They actually had displayed there on the CES show floor. It's very interesting.
Yeah, very, very cool. So for the same conference last year, Bell displayed just the cabin design of the taxi, and for CES 2019, the design got some wings. The Bell aircraft, coined the Bell Nexus, is powered by a hybrid electric propulsion system. That's cool, which uses 6 tilting fans to manage takeoff. And again, the video and the images and so forth that Ben's sharing with you really make that point. Based on the cabin design on display last year, the taxi can potentially transport up to 4 passengers, as well as offer them a fully integrated user experience, including conference calling, news broadcasting, and even document sharing support. Otherwise, the interior space is allegedly quiet and relaxing. Next year, the Uber and its partners intend to start demonstrator flights, and in 2023, aerial ride sharing for short local trips will commercially begin. So, I think the thing that impresses me about this, Ben, I think it's right. The idea of me as an individual or you as an individual owning some kind of flying vehicle is the nightmare of control.
You referenced,
but a taxi's another thing.
You referenced the Jetsons earlier. What did the Jetsons have? Yeah. They had a flying car, and I think that's what everyone believes that they're going to have. They're going to have their own flying car. Might not be the case.
Yeah, I think the control, unless you have this unbelievable environment where every vehicle in the air is fully aware of each other through amazing computer technology and networking and so forth, so that it's an autonomous, completely controlled air traffic situation, right? Otherwise, it'd be potentially a complete nightmare. Think of the teenager getting into their own little flying car. God help us all.
It would be kind of like World War I, where you had biplanes and it was dogfights and everyone just had to kind of spin around each other. That's all. And I got to say that this is not really related, but I did want to bring it up before we're about to end the show here in about a minute. But I was thinking of another article that I read about. Self-driving cars are going to be so energy efficient thanks to electric vehicles and the idling process. They are, instead of paying $2 to $3 to park in a parking garage and park themselves, it's actually going to be more cost effective if you're somewhere for, let's say, a couple hours. It might actually be more cost effective for the cars to cruise around the city and not park themselves. You would spend less in fuel than you would in parking fees. So experts were concerned about more cars being on the road because people who owned them would just have them idle instead of park. Obviously, and the way that kind of relates to this in my mind is like you wouldn't really have these things, kind of idling around or whatever. These would be, like they described in the article, they'd be taxi services. Cars would be taxi services. Yeah. This would be taxi services. It'd be on demand. And
I agree. Yeah. I think, again, that's where I think autonomous vehicle, especially if you're talking about any kind of aircraft, it's much more sensible to be a taxi kind of approach. Multiple people use.
Fleet management. It's a very non-sexy word, but hey, also a non-sexy word is it's the end of the show. Ralph, the music in the background means that we're done. If people want to find out more about you and your writings and what you do, where can they go?
It's super easy. Just go to your browser and type my name in, Ralph Bond, and then the word Wix, W-I-X. That's my web site supporter, and it'll take you right to my website.
Perfect. And we'll have a link to that in the show notes. Everyone, computeramerica.com one last time. And Ralph, thank you. I saw some emails going back and forth. Not sure what's happening next month, but we'll get you on as soon as we can. Thank you so much for coming on.
Always a joy.
All right, have a great one. And everyone else out there, have a great weekend. Happy Friday. Do something fun. Don't get too cold out there. And Ralph, stay safe with the snow. Everyone, hey, catch you next time.